Donald Trump's political world is once again facing a moment of uncertainty as a new voice from academia emerges with a bold plan that could drastically shift the conversation in American politics. The former president, who has prided himself on being untouchable in the political arena, now finds himself in the crosshairs of a strategy that some experts say could weaken his base and alter the course of the upcoming election. The plan comes from a respected political science professor whose analysis has been gaining traction across social media and progressive circles, particularly after a recent feature on PoliticsGirl. The professor's theory suggests that Trump's strength is not as impenetrable as many of his allies believe, and that his reign over the Republican Party could crumble faster than expected if key pressure points are exploited effectively. In the latest episodes of PoliticsGirl, the host laid out the professor's research, explaining how Trump's dominance in the GOP has been maintained through a combination of fear, misinformation, and loyalty built on repetition. According to the professor, this cycle can be broken, not by attacking Trump's character, which has proven ineffective, but by dismantling the illusion of his inevitability. The plan hinges on reframing Trump's leadership as a liability rather than a source of power. The professor argues that once Trump's followers perceive his leadership as a losing strategy, many will begin to drift away, leaving his campaign vulnerable from within. The episode quickly went viral, sparking heated debate among political commentators. Supporters of the professor's theory believe this could be a game-changing approach to counter Trump's influence without engaging in direct confrontation. Instead of fighting Trump on his own turf where insults and media spectacle dominate, the plan focuses on undercutting his psychological grip on his supporters. It is a strategy rooted in behavioral science and voter psychology, emphasizing that movements often collapse when the perception of invincibility is shattered. In recent months, Trump's campaign has faced a series of challenges that align with the professor's assessment. While Trump continues to dominate in Republican primary polls, there are visible cracks forming among key demographics that were once central to his rise. Younger conservatives, especially those under 35, are beginning to express fatigue with the chaos and constant legal battles surrounding him. Additionally, suburban voters who played a pivotal role in his 2016 victory have shown signs of drifting away, frustrated by the divisive tone and endless controversies that define his campaign trail. The professor's plan, as outlined in PoliticsGirl's breakdown, focuses on three critical pillars. The first is narrative control. Trump has long relied on dictating the national conversation, but the professor argues that opponents can redirect the narrative by highlighting competence, stability, and results over outrage. This requires a disciplined messaging strategy that does not take Trump's bait. By staying focused on policy and progress rather than personality, opponents can rig from Trump's dominance as dysfunction. The second pillar involves community-level engagement. Trump's base is strongest where information circulates within closed networks, online communities, churches, and local media echo chambers. The professor's plan calls for building trusted messengers within these spaces who can introduce alternative narratives without triggering immediate backlash. These messengers would not attack Trump directly but instead raise questions about his effectiveness, accountability, and the cost of his leadership. The idea is to plant seeds of doubt in spaces where direct confrontation has failed. The third pillar revolves around mobilizing disillusioned voters who have tuned out of politics altogether. The professor's research shows that a significant portion of Americans feel politically homeless, believing both major parties are broken. By presenting an inclusive message that contrasts Trump's chaos with a vision of cooperation and progress, this plan seeks to draw in the millions of non-voters who could tip the balance in key swing states. PoliticsGirl emphasized this as a moral and civic challenge, convincing people that engagement, not apathy, is the answer to the Trump problem. What makes this plan especially threatening to Trump's campaign is that it attacks the foundation of his appeal perception. Trump's power lies not just in his policy positions but in the aura of strength he projects. The professor notes that once that aura begins to fade, even slightly, the entire movement can lose momentum quickly. The strategy does not require winning over die-hard Trump supporters, but rather influencing the soft edges of his coalition, the voters who like Trump's bravado, but are tired of the chaos that comes with it. Republican insiders have reportedly taken notice of this growing conversation. Some strategists privately admit that Trump's campaign is operating with an underlying fragility. His base may appear enthusiastic, but enthusiasm does not always translate into reliable votes, especially when voter fatigue and legal uncertainty hang over the movement. Others worry that the professor's analysis could become a self-fulfilling prophecy if Trump's opponents effectively use it to undermine his confidence narrative. Trump himself seems aware of the shifting tone in the media. His recent public appearances have become increasingly defensive, filled with rants about disloyal Republicans and perceived enemies within his own party. At a rally last week, he lashed out at academic elites and so-called fake experts who, according to him, are plotting against the will of the American people. The comments appeared to be a direct response to the wave of attention surrounding the PoliticsGirl episode, though Trump did not mention it by name. Meanwhile, progressive activists have been quick to embrace the professor's framework. Online campaigns are already emerging that echo elements of the strategy, focusing less on personal attacks and more on reframing Trump as a symbol of failure. Memes and short videos highlighting broken promises from his first term, his chaotic leadership style, and his costly legal troubles are circulating widely. The idea is to shift the public's emotional association with Trump from power to exhaustion. Analysts note that this approach aligns with what political psychologists have long understood about movements built around strong personalities. When a leader's myth of success erodes, loyalty weakens. It is not necessary to disprove every claim or scandal but to introduce cognitive dissonance that makes followers question whether their loyalty serves their own interests. The professor's model leverages this dynamic, treating Trump not as a political ideology but as a psychological ecosystem sustained by belief in inevitability. The timing of this conversation is significant. With the next election cycle intensifying, both parties are ramping up efforts to define the narrative early. Trump's legal battles continue to dominate headlines, from ongoing investigations to court appearances that remind voters of the turmoil surrounding him. The professor's plan suggests that each of these moments can be reframed not as political persecution but as proof of instability and recklessness, weakening Trump's claim to competence. The PoliticsGirl episode also highlighted the broader implications of this approach. Beyond just defeating Trump, the professor's strategy represents a roadmap for countering disinformation-driven populism in general. By focusing on psychological and narrative dynamics rather than traditional campaign tactics, it offers a model that could be applied in other democracies facing similar challenges. The key takeaway is that populist movements often rely on emotional repetition and group identity, which can be disrupted through subtle narrative shifts rather than brute force confrontation. Critics, however, caution that the plan may underestimate the depth of Trump's emotional bond with his supporters. Many of his followers see attacks on Trump as attacks on themselves, making persuasion difficult. They argue that any attempt to reform Trump as weak or failing could backfire, reinforcing his victim narrative and driving even stronger loyalty among his core base. Still, proponents of the plan believe that the goal is not to convert the most devoted supporters but to weaken the outer layers of Trump's coalition, where loyalty is thinner. The professor's work has also sparked renewed discussion among Democrats about messaging discipline. For years, the party has struggled to find a consistent narrative that connects emotionally with voters. The professor argues that effective storytelling, not data or policy lists, wins elections. By framing the choice as stability versus chaos, competence versus crisis, Democrats can reach audiences that have tuned out political noise but crave reassurance and leadership. The episode's popularity shows there is a growing appetite for serious strategic thinking about how to navigate the Trump era. PoliticsGirl's platform has become a space where political theory meets public engagement, translating complex ideas into accessible discussions. The professor's appearance was a reminder that academic insight can still shape real-world strategy when communicated effectively. Trump's reaction in the coming weeks will likely determine how seriously his campaign views this emerging threat. If his team continues to dismiss it as elite chatter, they may miss an opportunity to counteract the narrative before spreads further. But if Trump senses genuine danger, he could launch an aggressive counter-offensive, portraying the professor and the media as part of a coordinated establishment effort to silence him. Such a move would rally his base, but also risk amplifying the very ideas he seeks to suppress. Behind the scenes, political consultants from both parties are reportedly studying the professor's research papers and social media engagement metrics. Some see this as a potential turning point in modern campaign strategy, a shift from policy battles to psychological warfare over perception and legitimacy. The concept of dismantling Trump's aura of dominance is not new, but this plan gives it an academic framework backed by years of behavioral research and case studies from global populist movements. For Trump's opponents, this offers both a roadmap and a challenge. It is not enough to hope that legal troubles or fatigue will erode his support. The professor insists that deliberate narrative engineering is required, an organized effort to replace Trump's story with a better one. This means consistent messaging, emotional storytelling, and a unified front that does not get distracted by every controversy he creates. The next few months will test whether this idea has practical power beyond the podcast studio. If adopted widely, it could change how campaigns communicate in the digital age, prioritizing emotion, story, and perception over policy minutiae. If it falters, Trump's dominance may continue unchecked, reinforced by every failed attempt to dethrone him. For now, one thing is clear: the conversation around Trump's political future is evolving. The PoliticsGirl episode with the professor has added a new dimension to the debate, one that focuses less on outrage and more on strategy, less on fighting Trump's fire and more on letting his own flames burn out. Whether this will mark the beginning of the end for Trump's reign or just another chapter in his enduring saga remains to be seen, but the fact that a professor's plan is shaking the political landscape suggests that even the most powerful figures are not